and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Simply Podcast. And today we will have a special conversation following the deadly plane crash that occurred recently in Nepal. And today we'll be joining us Captain Jeremy Burfoot from New Zealand and Captain Alon Pereg from Israel. Jeremy, would you kindly introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit about your experience?
Oh, thanks for having me on. I'm living in New Zealand. I started in aviation in 1978 and I did some time with the New Zealand Air Force, and then I flew light aircraft in Papua New Guinea, which is similar terrain to the Nepal that we're going to be talking about. And then I joined Qantas and flew big jets for 37 years.
Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today. Jeremy is also one of our support pilots in the Simplify application, Chat with a Pilot. And if you're flying on New Zealand or Australian time zone, you may speak with him. Alon, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, and thank you, Melody and Jeremy, for this conversation. I've been a pilot for the last 42 years, started as an Air Force pilot, fighter pilot. And then in 2004, I moved to El Al Airlines, and I'm now a Boeing 787 captain.
Thank you, Alon. So first off, Jeremy, what do we know about what happened?
We don't have any information as to why it happened as yet, but we just know that this sort of middle-sized turboprop aircraft crashed on final approach to an airport in Nepal with the loss of over 60 lives. No one survived, so it was a major disaster, really.
Alon, do you have any facts to add?
We only know that there was an accident. What's happening after is that there is an investigation going on. I know that they already retrieved the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. That means that the investigation can go deeper into the reasons of why the accident happened. They will be able to analyze what the instruments of the plane showed and what were the discussions inside the cockpit. And since the investigation is being ran in Nepal, but with the active participation of the European Committee and the manufacturer of the plane, then we are going to know what happened there.
Can you tell us what plane it was?
Yeah, it was an ATR-72. It's, as Jeremy said, it's a turboprop plane, which is very widely used in the world for just flights like this of hundreds of kilometers from point to point. Very reliable plane. So if you guys are going to fly this plane, there is nothing really that is problematic with this type of plane.
Okay, I'd like to also just add, because of my experience that I was in Nepal a very long time ago, this particular flight left Kathmandu and went to Pokhara. Pokhara is usually a destination that many tourists arrive to do the Round Annapurna, which is a trek over there. So it's typically people that are going to trek. It's not a typical flight that us Western people experience. And would you like to add something, Jerry, maybe perhaps about the climate or the weather or the cause? Do you have any suspicions? I mean, we know that it's going through ongoing investigation and the cause is not known yet, but maybe you have some theory?
Well, I wouldn't like to speculate on the cause, but Nepal is known for its high terrain and unusual weather, and also for its reasonably poor regulatory environment. So we're talking here about maintenance and training and supervision of the airline industry there is quite poor in relation to the rest of the world. And so it may well be that the end result of the investigation will show something like that.
Jeremy is very right in not trying to speculate, and you can find many speculations in the networks. which is totally not relevant at this time. But what we know, and I would like to elaborate a little bit about what Jeremy said, that the Nepalese aviation is known as problematic in terms of flight safety. The European Union has banned all the airlines in Nepal from flying into Europe. The American Federal Aviation Administration degraded the Nepalese aviation from 1, which is good, to 2 grade, which is not good. So I don't know what happened there, but bear in mind that this place has problems embedded in it, if you're talking about aviation.
Jeremy, what might be the reasons for a global degrading of the Nepalese aviation, in your opinion?
In general, in historical terms, they have a quite a high accident rate. Now, that could be partly because of the terrain, and I'm sure it is. But the other things that are not consistent is the regulatory environment and the training. And that would be why they would be banned from going into Europe, because obviously Europe doesn't have the terrain problems Nepal does. So the European Union must have looked at their record, looked and done audits on them and decided that they weren't fit to operate into Europe.
So in other words, if we're flying in different areas of the world, we are considered safer?
Absolutely. So flying in most other countries in the world would be a lot safer for all the reasons that I've just mentioned.
Alon, I believe many people are in contact with you and with Simplify regarding their fear of flying. What can you tell them?
Like after every accident or even incident or event in aviation in the world, we have a lot of questions coming from people that are afraid. This is totally natural that people feel more uncomfortable or less safe after they hear about such accidents. By the way, there is even a term for this. It's called compassion fatigue, where people think of what would have happened if I was in that plane. So guys, you were not in this plane. You are flying, most of you, in other parts of the world, in aviation that is not downgraded, in aviation that is under the very strict rules of the modern world. The aviation world a little bit acts like a global village. We all know about the other airlines, about other companies or countries, and we all know if an airline is safe or not. Just take the Nepalese aviation, by the way, that has suffered a lot of accidents, many of them fatal in the last couple of years. The last one was in 2022. So if you are flying in Europe, United States, India, Spain, wherever you are flying, of course in Australia and New Zealand, you are flying according to different standards. We are elaborating this very point of how can we fly after such a crash in the app. You can see in Simplify app, in the articles sections, 2 articles that refer to this point. So in short, the fact that you feel scared or uncomfortable after such an accident is very common and very logic, but you must understand this is an accident that does not come from our environment, natural environment.
So from our ecosystem. So to sum up, basically what you're saying is that accidents like these do happen. However, since this happened in Nepal, in a different ecosystem and different terrain, it does not reflect on our common day-to-day flights in Europe, in the USA. And as far as I know, statistically, flying still is the safest method of transportation these days. Jeremy, would you like to add something perhaps from your experience and over in New Zealand, Australia? How does this, how do you see it, and how does it reflect in your eyes?
Well, when I get on an aeroplane as a passenger in New Zealand or Australia, I'm totally relaxed and confident that I'll get to the other end without a problem. But if I was flying in Nepal, I'd be nervous. So that's the difference.
Is there a reason, Alon, for people to be concerned and fear that a crash like this could happen to them?
As you said, Melody, before, flying is the safest way to travel. Safest way. And it stays like this when you are flying under normal conditions in an airline that is a part of the world, of the ecosystem of the aviation world, as you said. So there is no need to be specially alerted about it. Now, I would add something else. After such an accident, we have two types of footage that is flooding us. One is actual footage from the crash. Don't look at it. Just avoid it. It doesn't help you. And a second is worse. It's fake news. These are so-called films taken from inside the cabin or such things.
Of maybe of a different flight, perhaps, not necessarily this flight.
Yeah, different flight or just fake per se. Don't look at it. Avoid it. Try to not to disseminate it and not to look at it, because it does nothing good to you or to your environment. So,
right. So just avoid the consumption of all media pertaining to this event, and just in general, plane crashes. I mean, if people are sensitive like me, it's just better to avoid the consumption of this type of content. Excellent, thank you. And
nothing to your health or to your anxiety.
Jeremy, I know that in your long flying career, you've flown in challenging areas. Have you ever flown to Nepal?
Well, I used to fly in New Guinea for a few years before I joined Qantas. And there's very high terrain there. And that does cause also difficulties with the weather. And the airstrips and the altitude is very high, which takes away some of the performance of the aircraft. So we had the same thing in New Guinea when I was flying there. The difference was that we had good pilot training and also good regulation at the time in New Guinea.
Excellent. So, gentlemen, to summarize, Alon, maybe you can give us like this final statement, although you've emphasized it several times that there's no need to fear or be overly alerted in any such way. Can you help us sort of give that extra assurance to any fearful flyers that are after this event just feel a little bit more uneasy, and how it reflects to their future flying?
Yes. So other than the compassion fatigue that is our tendency to think about us in that position of these poor people that were in the crash, which is something that we do to ourselves and does nothing good to us. There is another thing. Every gap of knowledge that we have is being filled with fears. So if we don't know anything about the safety of flight or about the other facts in life, this gap is also always being filled with fears and anxieties. So learn, educate yourselves. We have in Simplify a full course for you to learn and to understand, and you can get other information from other books and YouTube and any channel that is valid and gives you good or credible information. I would say learn and educate yourself.
Whatever I say is coming from a pilot, and pilots aren't fearful of flying because they know the reality. So it would sound a little bit shallow, but I just hope that listening to this or watching this video has made some people feel a little bit better about the whole thing.
Thank you, Jeremy and Alon, for joining us today. I believe our conversation was very beneficial and helpful for our listeners to better perceive the accident in Nepal. As always, you're welcome to share your comments, questions, and of course, share this video with anybody that you think may benefit. And stay tuned for another episode of Simply Podcast.